Hello, I'm Chris Slight, the editor of International Construction Magazine, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the Yellow Table, our annual survey of the world's 50 largest construction equipment manufacturers. The Yellow Table is published every April, and you can download the 2013 edition of the magazine from our website www.khl.com. So this is what the top 10 of the Yellow Table looks like this year, and really there are no great surprises. Caterpillar and Komatsu are at number 1 and 2, where they've been for decades. Hitachi and Volvo have swapped places in 3 and 4 compared to last year, and the same goes for Zoomlion and Liebherr and John Deere and Doosan Infracore. But overall, no great surprises, no new entries into the top 10 and no big moves within it. This pie chart breaks down the revenues of the top 50 companies ranked in the Yellow Table. I think the most striking thing is how big Caterpillar and Komatsu are. Caterpillar is of course the clear number 1, and as this chart illustrates, is about twice the size of Komatsu, the number 2 in the industry. And then again, Komatsu is about twice the size of the third place company, Hitachi. The other thing this chart illustrates is how the top 10 players account for about 2/3 of the revenues of the entire top 50. So it does illustrate how important these large, long line manufacturers are. This shows how revenues have developed over the last 10 years for the top 50 manufacturers. Obviously there was a big dip in 2009, but since then things have bounced back pretty well. Last year revenues came to $186 billion US, and that was a record for the industry. But the interesting point is the growth was only about 2.5% compared to the previous year, and that is quite unusual. This is a cyclical industry, and we normally see swings of at least 10% one way or the other year on year. So that illustrates that while there was some growth in the markets last year, things were relatively subdued. The key factor that depressed growth last year was the weak market in China, and this is reflected particularly in the performance of the Chinese manufacturers in the Yellow Table. The big three did okay, they at least maintained their positions, and in fact Zoomlion gained a place. But the other 6 manufacturers in the Yellow Table all lost places, and some of them, like Shantui and Longqing, saw pretty big falls. In addition to this, Changlin, which was listed towards the bottom of last year's Yellow Table, dropped out of it altogether. Overall, the Chinese manufacturers had revenues of $27.9 billion US, which was down about 12% on the previous year. And that was the first time in the 10-year history of the Yellow Table that both revenues and the Chinese manufacturers' shares have fallen. So that fall in the Chinese market did eat a little into the share that Asian manufacturers enjoy in terms of their split of the revenue of the top 50. And it was the North American manufacturers that benefited by and large. But these were only swings of 1 or 2 percentage points, and the split between the 3 major regions for manufacturing, North America, Asia and Europe, were pretty much unchanged compared to last year. The other thing to mention about the Yellow Table is it's now in its 10th year, and it's interesting to look at how companies have moved over that longer term. This table just illustrates the top 10 from 10 years ago and where they are now. As I said right at the start, Caterpillar and Komatsu have been unmoved for the last 10 years, and they don't look like they're going anyplace soon. And elsewhere in the top 10, a lot of the companies that we see there today have been there for 10 years or more. Terex, Liebherr, Hitachi, Volvo and John Deere have all hung on in there over the last decade. But there have been a few that have dropped out. Probably the most striking is CNH, which was number 3 in the industry 10 years ago, but in this year's table is ranked at number 15. The other companies missing compared to 10 years ago are Metso Minerals, although it's close at number 12, and the other one to drop out is Sandvik, which is a bit of a special case. It used to be Sandvik Mining and Construction that we ranked in the Yellow Table, but those 2 businesses have since been demerged, and Sandvik Construction is now at number 26. So while it is a fall, you're not really comparing like with like. Those 3 companies that have dropped out of the top 10 have been replaced by Sanyo and Zoomlion, which have seen remarkable growth over the last decade. And the other addition is Doosan Infracore. Now 10 years ago, that company didn't really exist in the same way it was now. Its larger earth-moving equipment was sold under the Daewoo brand. Doosan has since acquired Daewoo, and it's also added other bolt-on acquisitions, including Bobcat and Moxie, which makes it the group it is today. But by and large, the companies in the top 10 and indeed the top 20 in the Yellow Table, are pretty much unchanged from what they were 10 years ago. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to read more about the Yellow Table, it's published in the April edition of International Construction. It's also published as a standalone report or as a 5-year multi-annual report, and you can download these from the information store, which is accessed from www.khl.com.